Doesn't mean in my book, God wants you to enjoy life and wants you to enjoy it. Watch here as we go here. Remember, your money is yours only in trust. So that's part of the advantage there. Should we make money? Yes, of course. The Bible says, be not slothful in business. We are to labor as we may impart to him who needs. So see, this is the interesting thing to me. God is happy for us to make money. And money is not, remember this? The money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. In other words, if that's the only thing I'm going for. But here it says that we are to labor as we may impart to him who needs. Christians must work. They must engage in business, and they can do this without committing sin. But many become so absorbed in the business that they have no time for prayer, no time for Bible study, and no time to seek and serve God, who is giving them the ability to earn that money. So we are entrusted with the money that we have. Here it is again. I like this part. God does not propose to sustain his work by miracles. Because I hear people say, well, if God owns everything, why doesn't he just build Midvale a new church? Or is it Midvale Park? Midvale Park, a new church. You know, God owns it. But here it is. God does not propose to sustain his work by miracles. He wants and requires our involvement in that. And so that's part of it. So and then we go here, as sinners by nature. I want to get my notes, and I'm sorry, I left them back here. Just a second here. Hi. I just had to get my notes. I forgot them right here. Okay, I know there's a part here that I really wanted to get right, so. Okay. Yes, thank you, okay. So wealth can prove to be a blessing if we regard it as God's, to be received in thankfulness and thankfully returned back to him. And I always say that we are in enemy territory. And of course, you need funds to spread the good news of salvation, just as any country needs funds to fund its military. And so sacrifices are required to support the troops who provide us with the freedom that we enjoy. So the same is true for God's work. There's something going on. We are asked to sacrifice for that cause. However, some will say, God owns everything, so why doesn't he just use it instead of asking for me for it? I love this quote, and that's the one I just did here. God does not propose to sustain his work by miracles. He wants us and requires our involvement. Why? Because he is not just trying to fund a war raged against him. He is fitting, refining, and finishing our character. That's what it's all about. And he works to restore us to the original character in which was so damaged by sin and selfishness. And so God's way is that we should consider ourselves as stewards of the Lord's property and God as the supreme proprietor to whom we are to render his own when he shall require it. We should never forget that we are placed on trial in this world to determine our fitness for the future life. We have all been infected by sin, and I think this is what I was saying here, that God is testing us. So therefore God tests us here by committing us to temporal possessions that our use of them may show whether we can be entrusted with eternal riches. So that's the idea here. But you know, God is the supreme person here. We must never forget that we are placed on trial here. We are all sinners. This is the crazy thing. You know, you look up in Romans where it says, therefore, not as through one man sin entered the world, than death through sin. Thus death spread to all men. So we are all sinners. So we are sinners by birth. We are sinners by nature. We are sinful by actions. Sin is in our genes. Having God first in our life is such a battle because we want the job of being most important. We're insatiably self-centered. I could go on, but I know you get the point. That we are infected by sin, and that's what God is trying to do. So we are determined sinners. There is nothing in this world that can equal our devotion to sin. We are loyal to it. Our minds are constantly gravitating towards it. I was originally created to crave God, but now all I want to do is my own way. And so we are diseased sinners. Disease is a virus of the soul. It's gangrene of the heart. It eats away at the fabric of our being and will continue to consume us, and there is only one thing that can stop it. It is just amazing to me that the amount of people that say, you know what? I'm not that bad of a person. You know, actually, have you heard people say that? You know, I'm a good person. I mean, God understands me. He'll we'll be okay. And so I like to tell people, hey, you know what? Good people don't go to heaven. Did you know that? Good people don't go to heaven. Because what does it say here? 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins. It didn't say if we do enough good deeds, He's faithful and just and faithful to forgive our sins. Okay? But here's the beauty of it. I like the rest of that verse. If we confess our sins, so we now say we are sinners. We recognize it. He is faithful to forgive us our sins. And then what? Cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So there's the Holy Spirit at work, cleansing us from all unrighteousness. So being a good person just means that, hey, I'll get in on my own, thank you very much. It's kind of like Cain and Abel, right? God says, bring a sacrifice. Abel said, you know what, I got a better idea. I grow fruit, and it's really good stuff. I'll pick the very best. I grew it, and I'm going to give it to God. Didn't work out too well. For that. So that's the whole idea. People who say, oh, well, I'm a good person. I don't need to worry about the end of time or anything like that. I'm a good person. God will recognize that. The problem is, that's not what God's asking for. He's asking for a heart that is changed and not something I do myself. So we are diseased sinners, and without a change in our condition, we are terminal, using medical terms there for a friend here. Unless we apply the remedy offered by Christ in 1 John 1:9, there is no entrance to heaven, because the character is not been refined, and there is not a contrite heart there. If I do it myself, I'm still just doing it from selfish reasons. So what does the cleansing process look like? Right here, therefore God tests us by committing us to temporal possessions. God loves us supremely, but He must cure us from the infection of sin, which is selfishness. Our battle is against selfishness. It is a soul-destroying sin. God is trying to teach us heaven's ways so that we can become citizens there. Citizens of heaven respond to temporal possessions like this. You know, this morning we talked about that. All things belong to God. All the prosperity and things belong to Him. We don't need to go into that anymore. So remember that all the means we have is given by God. Use it to glorify His name. Use it wisely and economically, because it is a sacred trust. So, then how shall we live? How should we live? It would be fair to say that God does not want us to tie up all of our investments just to have large bank accounts when there is such need in God's work. But there is balance in this. I want you to know. Look at this. We may ask something in our lives. Notice what Ellen White says about whether we should spend some of our resources, or should we give all of our resources to God, or should we be spending some for here? Here it is. Brother E had conscientiously decided not to build a convenient woodshed and kitchen for his large family because he did not feel free to invest means in personal conveniences when the cause of God needed money to carry it forward. Here we are again. I tried to show him that it was necessary for the health as well as the morals of his children that he should make home pleasant and provide convenience to lighten the labor of his wife. God has given us means. It doesn't mean that we should give it all away to his work. He is asking us to care for our wife, our family, our spouse, our children. So we are supposed to be doing these kind of things. I also believe God calls us to save, and I understand that you guys have been through that financial university information. I think that's just wonderful that you guys have. I was watching it online before I came here from the previous sessions. So hopefully you have some resources and appreciated assets the longer that you live. And God expects us to do that. So, now we need to plan, and here's where we're getting into the plan giving part. You guys have been all about making sure that you are managing the monies that God has given to you personally now. The next step is make sure that when you're not here, what God would want you to do with the accumulated assets that you have. In case you are no longer here, because we never know when when we head to eternity. It could happen to any of us anytime. So, what is the very best legacy that you can leave your family? Is it every dollar that you own? Look at what she says. The very best legacy which parents can leave their children is a knowledge of useful labor and the example of a life characterized by disinterested benevolence. What is disinterested benevolence? It's I'm going to give to you even though I don't expect anything back from you. It's completely disinterested. If I give to you and I know I'm going to get a vacation in Hawaii, well, that's not quite disinterested. Okay, so this is just giving because there is a need. And did I get that spelled right? Yeah, it looks like I did. Okay. And so it continues on. So disinterested benevolence. By such a life, they show the true value of money, that it is only to be appreciated for the good that it will accomplish in relieving their own wants and the necessities of others, and in advancing the cause of God. Okay, so let's take a look at this. What's the value of money? Relieving the wants and needs of the family. And I include education in that too. So I think the best thing you can do for your kids, besides teaching them good labor habits and a devoted life to God, is providing them education. Give them a good start for life. So there it is. The next one is to help others. So the value of money is to relieve the wants and needs of the family, help others in need. Why do you think God would want us to have the ability to earn wealth? Because I don't think God expects Christians to be in the soup line. We should be providing the soup for those. And so I don't think God intends us to be, on the end of the other end of the charity. I would expect that He says, look, I'll give you, if you're the kind of character that I want and would like, I want you to be able to give to others. So the value of money is to help others in need and relieve the wants of your family and to advance God's work. 3 things, folk. That's what the value of money is. To give your wants and needs of your family and to help others in needs and advance God's work, not worshipped or gotten at any cost. That's the value. That's the value of money. So, what should I leave my kids? Here are some principles. How much should I leave my kids? I'm going to give you a few principles and then we'll show you some text here. The knowledge of useful labor is better than a large inheritance at death. Okay? Property gifts do not increase family affection. She actually says this, that just because we give to our family doesn't mean that they're going to love us more. That doesn't always work out that way. The children left to depend on their own resources generally prize their abilities, improve their privileges, and cultivate and direct their faculties to accomplish much more of life's purpose, and are better off than those who depend on a family estate. Okay. They frequently develop characters of industry, frugality, moral worth, which lies at the foundation of the successful Christian life. Okay? Okay, so property gifts does not increase family affection. God is not always glorified by property entrusted to children. Why would that be? Because God has given you this asset. Because He can trust you with it. Now, if I just give it to my child, the child may not be ready for that. May not have the mindset that it has here. Here's some examples of this. Brother Jay has erred in entrusting his property to his children. In other words, he just gave everything he had to his kids. Okay? He has laid upon them responsibilities which they were not qualified to bear. So sometimes we can't just give it to indiscriminately. Let's put it that way. Okay, here's a couple other ones here. We'll go through these and then I'll show you some examples of this. Parents should exercise the right that God has given them. He entrusted to them the talents He would have them use to His glory. The children were not to become responsible for the talents of the parents. Interesting, isn't it? If they have children who are afflicted or are struggling in poverty and who will make a judicious use of the means, they should be considered. So God's not saying, no. I'm not saying not give to your kids. I'm saying, if they are somebody in need and you know that they will treat it well and not just run off to Las Vegas with it, then, yes, you should consider them, certainly. Certainly consider your kids. So I don't think it's an imbalanced approach. And that's what I appreciate about this. Let's see, to consider. I think there's one more part of this. If they have unbelieving children who have abundance of this world and who are serving the world, they commit a sin against the master who has made them the stewards. Is that pretty clear? That's always a tricky one, folks. My kids are kind of expecting an inheritance here, but they are not anywhere near God at all, and they're living totally from the world's perspective. Should I give what God has entrusted me to my child, knowing that they have no interest in advancing God's work with it? That's a tough one, folks. I'm not going to give you the answer because that's going to be between you and God. But I think in some cases, if you think that there is a redeemable possibility or purpose in giving it, then you may want to give some. I don't think you should give everything to them, knowing that they don't have any interest in God's work. And we'll go through a couple more of these statements as well. Okay, children of aged parents who profess to believe the truth should, in the fear of God, advise and entreat their parents to be true to their profession of faith and take a course in regard to their means which God can approve. So if you have kids that really understand God, they're going to encourage you to make sure you give a portion of that to God. So those parents should lay up for themselves treasures in heaven by appropriating their means themselves to the advancement of the cause of God. They should not rob themselves of heavenly treasures by leaving a surplus of means to those who have enough. There is another statement there. How much do you give your kids? I think it's nice to receive an inheritance. Some inheritance. My parents will probably give me, I'm going to guess, if they had an assets, my dad's gone and my mom's just living on her own right now, so there's not much assets there. But I imagine I'll get $20,000, $30,000 at their death. That's probably about it. The rest of it, my mom actually asked me, she says, would you feel a little bit like disregarded if I just gave everything to the church? And I got to thinking about that. That's kind of a tricky question. And I'm like, my human nature says yes. But, it's your choice. That's your choice. And I think that if that's what God is asking you to do, that's exactly what you should do. But I feel like a certain amount given to your kids is a good investment. Tell me, have you heard what Warren Buffett has said about this? How much should you give your kids? Here's what Warren Buffett says. Enough so they can do something, but not so much that they'll do nothing. Of course, he would have enough to make it to give that they wouldn't have to do anything for the rest of their life. But he is even of this same mindset. Give them enough so they can do something, but not so much that they'll do nothing. So that's kind of the thing here as well. All right. Parents should have great fear in entrusting children with talents of means that God has placed in their hands. Ooh, careful now. Unless they have the surest evidence that their children have greater interest in, love for, and devotion to the cause of God than they themselves possess. Can you imagine that? You know what? I'm going to give my money to my kids because I may not give it to God, but I know they will. That's basically what it's saying here. And that these children will be more earnest and zealous in forwarding the work of God. Giving them money to be missionaries may be a very good way to give an inheritance. So that's kind of interesting. So death will not come one day sooner, folks, because you decide to make a trust or a will. It does not come one day sooner. And here's what it basically says. In disposing of your property by will to your relatives, be sure that you do not forget God's cause. You are His agents holding His property, and His claim should have your first consideration. Let's see, I think there's the rest of it more. Your wife and your children, of course, should not be left destitute. Here's the counsel that we're getting from Ellen White here. Provision should be made for them if they are needy, but do not, simply because it is customary, bring into your will a long list of relatives who are not needy. God's work is in need, and He is entrusting you with the ability to accumulate wealth, and then He is going to see how you will work with that. So let's move into a few examples here of what is an estate. Okay, what is an estate? Basically, an estate is your assets. If you were to liquidate everything that you are titled to you now, that would be the estate. Okay, so assets, money is another way to look at it that way. But so what is an estate plan? It's choosing who, when, and how your assets are distributed. That's what an estate plan. So if I wasn't here tomorrow, who would get my car? Who would get my house? Who would get my furnishings? Who would get my bank accounts? Who would get my retirement? All of those kind of things. That's what a will does. If you don't make one yourself, just remember, Uncle Sam has already made one for you. Okay? So he's got it all figured out. But if you want God's work to be considered in any of those assets that you leave behind, then you must do a will. At least a will. When do you do a will and when do you do a trust? Okay, if you have very limited assets, a will will work without any trouble. The issue with a will is that it has to be probated, which means that you have to take it down to the courthouse, open up a probate, and every transaction that you do is overseen by a lawyer. Okay? So that's a will. A trust, sorry, I didn't want to do that. A trust, then, is actually bypasses all probate processes. Now, the thing about probate is that it's not bad. It's just that it takes a little longer and it'll cost a little money because the probate officers will be paid from that. But it's a good oversight for somebody not doing anything with your will. Okay, but a trust then is if your assets are a little bit larger. Quite frankly, a will works fairly good up to the point of about $150,000. Okay, if it goes beyond that, anybody that owns a house in Tucson needs a trust because your assets are already over that limit for sure. So a trust now is a much more legally defined document, and the courts say if you have prepared a trust, you don't need to do probate. You are legally bound by what's in there. So it's a much larger explanation of what happens to it. So I can move my house into my trust. I can move any other large assets into my trust. And now the trust acts and has to be fulfilled by the trustee. So always you are the trustee while you're alive. And then you appoint a successor trustee. So who takes over after you're gone? Obviously, if there's a husband and wife involved here, they always have the successor trustee as each other, and then you have a successor trustee for after both of you are gone. So that's how that works. So a trust is very good. You know, there's some people you know that probate is completely public domain. You can go look up. Who was who married Kennedy? Jacqueline? Yeah. She didn't have a will. So you can go look at every dime of her assets. It's all public record. A trust is completely private. So that's why I recommend a trust in that, because you can take care of all of your affairs without having to report it to anybody. Okay, so, yeah.
Is there any tax advantage between the two? Or
what's the advantage between the two?
Tax.
Tax advantage?
Is the same, you pay the same amount of tax?
Yeah.
Whether it's from
Now,
trust or
yeah, good question. He's asking, do you pay any more tax with one or the other? No, the tax is going to be the same. It's the process of how it goes through. But remember now, the government has pretty much eliminated death tax or tax on property. Each person has now $5.5 million. So a husband and wife, if they were both, died, you can have assets of over $20 million, and you won't have any tax. So they have really just kind of kicked that out of the realm of. So there's no more such thing as death tax unless you happen to be super rich. Okay, so. That's the issue. So that's the advantage of a trust as well. It'll all be kept quiet. That's the whole thing. And you can give to God's work. You can spring other trusts out of that, and we'll get into that real briefly here later. So anyway, here is what you get when you do a trust, especially if you do it with it is written. This is what you get. You get a will. Each person has a will. A will is only for one person. It's not a couple. Every individual has a will. Because in a will, I can say, you know what? I want my classic car to go to Curt Dolinsky. This is before it goes to the trust. So the will, what we call it, is a pour-over will. You take your... Boy, how do I say this real briefly? A trust, you can name your house, your bank account, your large assets, but you never put a car in a trust. So that's what a will does. A will takes all of your living, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word out there. Miscellaneous items, yes, all of those things, your furnishings, your personal effects. That's the word I'm looking for. All of your personal effects, and an automobile is considered a personal effect. So it takes all the personal effects and liquidates them and pours that into the trust. Now the trust not only has the house and some other assets, it now has the assets from the will. So now you're building up. So the will doesn't have beneficiaries. The beneficiary of the will is the trust. Okay, so I just want to make sure. Please, it gets a little bit complex, so ask any questions if you want. So you get a will individually. Then you get a revocable living trust. Obviously, the word revocable means you can change anything in that will that you want, and you can write a whole nother one, and as long as it's dated after this one, it's the one that carries the day. Okay? So completely revocable. Then there's assets transferred assistance. What we do is we help you move your house into the living trust. So a lawyer just makes up a quick claim deed and moves your house from your name into the name of the trust. You're doing your family a favor by doing that, because they don't have to do it then if you're gone. So it's already in the trust, and then if you name them the successor trustee, then they've got the rights to do whatever with it. Then you get powers of attorney for finance. This means that if you were incapacitated at some point in your life and you were not able to write the checks to pay the property tax or the mortgage or whatever it was, you have identified an individual who can sign in your stead. And they have now the responsibility to care for your assets and what we call maintain your assets. Then the power of attorney is for health care. So you get a POA for health care. This says, I don't want any heroics done to save my life. In other words, that's what happened to my dad. He was in an accident, and they came to us and said, he coded, and he says, do you want us to do, what do they do with the compressions?
Resuscitation.
Yeah, what's that? Resuscitation. And we're like, I says, well, I mean, sure, why not? He says, well, if we do resuscitation, we are going to break ribs. You're going to break ribs? And I'm like, no, he's 85. He'll he's lived a good life. If there's something that'll happen. So you can choose this in your power of attorney for healthcare. You can say, I want heroics, I don't want heroics. I want to donate my body if I pass. Basically, it asks you these questions. And it gives an individual, your personal representative, the right to say yes or no to treatment. Okay? So that's what this does. And we have it spelled out. It's all done legally, of course, with this kind of thing. So that's what you get in an estate plan. So each of you will get a will. Each of you will get a power of attorney for finance and a power of attorney for health care. And then the revocable living trust is something you can do as a couple. And then we'll transfer the assets in. So that just tells you what an estate plan is. You've got all your bases covered in this situation. So if you weren't here, what happened to your assets, you know exactly where it's going to go. And that's a peaceful feeling. And also, it's what God, I believe, would want to happen when He give us the assets. Okay, so estate distribution. There's only 3 places you can give your money. Did you know that? 3 places. You can give it to your family. Okay? You can give it to the church, or God's work, or charity, which it is written, or you can give it to the government. Those are the 3 places you can give your estate. Only 3. So here is what It Is Written can do for you. We can help you with the following. Lower your current income tax. We can show you ways to do that. Avoid capital gains tax when you sell a stock or a real estate. You can avoid the probate by doing a trust for you. We can create a lifetime income stream. And this is what I'm looking for as I don't know how old you think I am, but I just turned 63. So I'm looking for I want to make sure I have enough to live on in life because I want to travel the world. So anyway, we can create lifetime income streams, and we'll show you how to do that. Great tax advantages for that. You can give large sums to It Is Written and still give an inheritance to your family. And that's what I wanted to show you here. Thank you for the water. Wow. Losing my... Okay, let's start with some of these. A lifetime income gift. This is something you can do right now. And basically what you are saying is, God, this resource that I have, I want to give it to you. But I still need some revenue from that to live on. So here's some money, but that I need some money to live on. So you're already indicating, God, this is yours, but I need income off of it for as long as I live, and then it's yours. So that's what a charitable gift annuity can do for you. Here are some of the advantages. It gives you a fixed payout for life. So as long as you can breathe, this money will be paid to you. Okay? And it's safe as a secure income. The rates are based on age. And I have a list of the annuity rates that the government puts out. Based on your age, you can see what the percentages are. And if you are interested, this is the latest percentages that you can get for that. You want one? I think I got some more back here. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. Wait a second here. I think I have them.
Those rates are based on when you set up the annuity?
Yes, they're based on the age when you set up the annuity. Exactly right. Let me see. I think I've got them up here. I'll continue on here. Income tax deduction. So here's how we can save you taxes. You give just a second. Yep. I'm sorry. I thought I had a lot more than I did. Did you have a copy machine back there?
Yeah.
Okay. Can one of you? Did one of you? He'll bring one back. Great. I'm going to put it up on the screen here, but I'll just give a few examples. This gets a little bit more. So it depends on if you have a single person or if it's a couple. You'll notice the rates here for a single person is here, and a couple is on the far right. And because it's going to pay out a longer period, the interest rate won't be quite as high with a couple because it'll be paying out for a longer time. And so that's how that works. But this is the beauty of it. You get fixed income for life. And so here's my thing. As I look at those rates, I'm saying, you know what? The sweet spot for an annuity is right around 70 to 72. Is a really good time because that's where you get into the income bracket where it's a little bit more than you can get with other types of investments. So it's a good time. And you get an income tax deduction, and then it's almost 80% tax-free payouts. That's big. You don't even have to count it as income. So about 80% of the payouts, so they'll only give you a 1099 for 20% of that year's payouts. So it's getting tax-free payouts. Very cool. And then it's a sensible life income plan that I think really works well for that. And of course, it changes lives for eternity because that money, you've already told God that's your money. As soon as I'm gone, that money goes into God's works and changes lives for eternity. Okay, here is some, let's see, I guess I didn't have that slide. I thought I had a slide that had a whole bunch of the rates on it, but I hope they'll get some things back there. Okay, so this is how it could work. This is a charitable gift annuity now. This is a lifetime gift. What I mean is that you do it during life, okay? So if you had $20,000, we're looking at Mary Donor here, 80 years old, okay? She transfers the gift. She gets a tax deduction of almost half of what she gave. So if I can now take this tax deduction and wipe out any taxes that I have to pay for the next 5 years. In other words, if you can't use all of it in the first year or two, it will go for 5 years. So you get to wipe out your taxes for a while. And that's part of it. Then you start, day one, you start receiving $1,400 a year, which is, what is that per month? I don't have to look it up per month. And then if you have a life expectancy at 80, they give you a life expectancy of 12.8 years. That's all government figures. So really, over your lifetime, you're going to get almost the entire amount back. And God's work gets a good portion, a good gift at the end. Because see, let me see if I can get this pointer to work here. See right here? 7.3. That's a pretty good interest rate return. We invest the money, and we probably are going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 6%, maybe 6.5% if it's a really good year. And so what happens is that we're still going to pay the 7.3 to you, but it's going to come from the principal. And so at the end, the charity is expected to get a lower gift than what the original amount was, just simply because we're going to have to pay out of the principal to keep up the 7%. Any questions there? Okay. So that's basically how it works. Lifetime income. Great source for you. Okay. Now, if you have other assets, if you have a stock portfolio, if you have rental properties, if you have a second home, or some kind of an asset that has appreciated, and if you sell it, you're going to pay capital gains on the appreciated value. That then is when we would use something called a charitable remainder trust. So here's how this works. You transfer the property into the trust. You bypass all of the capital gains on that property, and you take an income tax deduction as well. So that's like double dipping. You don't pay the capital gains tax on the appreciated amount, and then you get a tax deduction on the whole amount. And it's about 30 to 40% typically. It depends on your age. Again. And so you move the property into the trust, and it pays out for 2 lives as long as you live. And then it goes to ministry or to God's work. So an example of something like this would be this. And we call this a give it twice trust, because you're going to start with, let's say, $500,000. This is a little bit different type of a one. At death, your estate asset funds a testamentary trust. So, if you have an IRA, if you have property, you can keep that property, and in your trust, you say, I want this property to go into another trust called a charitable remainder trust, and it will have your name on it. That now is sold at your death, and a testamentary trust is created. Testamentary means this is what I want to happen when I'm gone. So a testamentary trust is created. The trust is invested, income is paid out to the family. So here's a way that you can pay your inheritance. You can, at death, the estate is transferred to a testamentary trust. It's all written up in there. So it goes from your estate to a trust that is invested and pays the family for no matter how many. You can do this for up to 20 years. So what we usually figure out is, okay, how long will it take the family to get that $500,000? Okay, then we'll make it for 15 years or 16 years, whatever it is, and then you pass along the whole thing to God's work. That's how you give it twice. You started out with 500, you gave God 500, you gave your family 500. Is that pretty cool? That's pretty cool. And so that's how this. Now there's lots of other ways to do this. Here's another way to do it. This is like property, okay? So let's say that you had a rental property. You had bought that property for about $100,000. Right now, the market value is about $400,000. So you have a $300,000 capital gain. And if you just outright sold the property, took the money, you would have to write in $300,000 on your income line on your taxes. And so you transfer that, but if you do it this way, you have a cost basis, so now you have $300,000. So you transfer the property title to the trust. This is when you're selling it. So in other words, before you sell the property, you deed the property into the trust. So it's no longer in your name, it's in the name of the trust. And it usually would say something like, in my case, it would be the Dolinsky Charitable Remainder Trust. Okay? So it's and you are the trustee. So you have the rights to do anything you want. You're the trustee and the grantor. We call them both kind of the same. And so we move this. The property is sold from the trust, so the trust owns the property. The trust owns the property and sells it. No taxes on sale. It bypasses capital gains tax, and you get an income tax deduction of $100,000. The $100,000 means that if I owe any taxes in the next 5 years, I can just go back and take that deduction, and I owe nothing. Okay, that's a tax deduction. So after you get your taxes done, you can always go back and zero it out with the numbers you have here. So then the trust now invests this money and pays out to the family over 20 years. After 20 years, the family gets this, God's work gets that. Giving it twice by using a trust. And this is all after you're gone. Because you have the asset, but you transfer the asset at the time. I'm sorry, this can happen right now. This you can do right now. What am I talking about? So you take the property. Let's say you have a rental property. You take it, you move it into the trust. The trust sells it, no capital gains, gives you a tax deduction, and we start investing it, and we start paying out to you. This is the beauty of it. In this case, you can still get it. So this pays out for your life. And then, if you choose, you can have extended those payments out to your family. The government allows up to 20 years. So this is a 20 years. So the family would get this, but you would get whatever the payout is for your lifetime and your spouse's lifetime. I mean, I don't know why people aren't using charities all the time to do this with, because it is a great you get tax advantage up front that year. You get the tax advantage for the next 5 years, and yet you're getting a steady stream of income off of this. I've got a lady right now that is put in about $350,000 into this, and she's getting $2,000 a month. I mean, that's not bad for the rest of her life. And then she could give it on to her family if she wanted to. So anyway.
Could you explain again how do you get an income tax deduction of $120,000
Okay.
from selling, transferring to
Good.
deed to you?
Right, okay. So the cost basis, so you paid $100,000 for the property.
Okay,
It's now sold it for $400,000. So now $300,000 is considered a charitable gift. And the government is going to give you a percentage of that charitable gift. So the $100,000 that you get in deduction here is about 1/3 of your gift, Because, well, no, I'm sorry, this is a gift too. So 400,000, that's a gift because you're giving that too. So there is a formula that we have that calculates out. So it's a percent, it's what the government says, well, for that kind of a gift, we'll give you 30 or 40% of the original amount. So in this case, it's 25% of the original amount.
So your total income is the base plus this 400,000.
Yeah, because you're...
Minus 100.
That, no, the capital gains that you would pay is wiped away, and that would have been the 300. But your gift is 400. Your gift, because that 100,000 that you used to buy the property, you're still giving that to the trust, as well as the appreciation you're giving to the trust. Okay, so that's the 400. But so the government says, okay, well, we're going to give you 25% of that amount in a tax deduction. So that's how that works. Yeah, good question. Good question. Okay, so there are some other things to do. How many of you have an IRA or a tax, some kind of a retirement fund? Okay? Here's some cool things to do. You should, if any of you are 70 and a half, there is something called RMD, random distribution requirements. Okay? What's that? Required mineral distribution. I always get it mixed up. Thank you. Required mineral distributions. The government has a table of how much every year that you have to take out of your retirement plan. Yeah, based on the principal and a percentage each year. And it increases each year. So, you should be paying all of your tithe out of your IRA because you don't have to pay tax on it. And any charitable gifts that you give, you could give from your IRA. Now here's the deal. When you give it from your IRA, you don't get a tax deduction because you were never taxed on it. So they're not going to give you a tax deduction. So it is a straight over, what we call a rollover. But it doesn't increase your income, and it doesn't max you out for charitable giving. Do you realize that you could, last year, you could only give up to 50% of your adjusted gross income in charitable gifts, or you could only get deductions for up to 50% of your income. With the new tax law that went through, it went up to 60%. So you can give up to 60% in charitable donations of your income. Now, the beauty of the IRA rollover is that it's not counted in that. So you could actually, if you have a lot of deductions to take, you can take them without having to add another deduction that you can't take, because you can roll it right over. So there's some advantages. But if you want to do this, here's an idea. Deferred inheritance. If you say, you know what, I want to give my kids my IRA, that'll be their inheritance. That is the worst gift you can give your family. Why? They're going to pay tax on it. And if you give them $100,000 or more, all of a sudden their tax bracket went from here to here. So not only do they pay tax on it, but they're going to pay a lot. Here is a way that you can do it and benefit God's work with it. So you have $500,000 in your IRA. You transfer the IRA, non-taxable trust, at time of death. So this is at your death. Let me just say one thing here. There are accounts that you can do what's called POD, pay on death. Okay? Some of them have TODs, which is transfer on death. But you can, any bank account, any investment account, any IRA account, any security account, those can all be POD'd. Now, let me ask you, who is going to get your bank account if you were to die right now? Do you have an identified beneficiary of your bank account? How about your IRA? How about any investment accounts? Those are something that I even have to go back and look at. So those, if you have a lot of those, sometimes you don't need a trust unless you own a house, because I can POD most of my assets that don't even go through the will, because they're immediately transferred. I'm sorry, life insurance is another one, of course. If you have a life insurance policy, that is automatically beneficiaried. And the beauty of a life insurance payout, is it taxable? It's not. Yes?
Can't you also, on real estate, you can just put the individual on the deed?
Yeah.
Like quick claim deed,
Yeah.
rather than on the loan.
Yeah. Do you want to know why we don't recommend that? Because let's say that, and people have done this for like bank accounts. Well, I'm just going to put my daughter on my bank account. I know that your daughter is the best person in the world, and she would never do anything to disinherit you, okay? But she could. Here's the other problem, and that's why we use powers of attorney. You can put her as the power of attorney. But what happens if all of a sudden your daughter gets into an auto accident and somebody sues her? Any account with her name on it is game for the lawyer. So not only her bank account, now your bank account is assets to go after. That's why we never recommend putting your children on your bank account or on your deed of property, because that all of a sudden is up for grabs if they happen to get into some kind of a legal a problem. So that is why we never recommend it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So there are ways to do that, and that's what powers of attorneys are for. Power of attorney says, if I'm incapacitated, I give them the rights. But that never puts their name on the asset. Okay? And that's the important part to do. So there's ways to protect yourself from that, and that's why we recommend that. Okay, so let's say you have an IRA. On death, this is transferred to the estate taxes deductions as well. So because you're transferring it to a trust, it now has a tax deduction. So if you have any assets in the estate that are taxable, this can go to help cover that. And of course, there's no income tax at all on this now. So normally, if I'd have pulled this out, I would pay income tax on $500,000. And you will be at the 32% tax rate. Just because of this. I don't care what else you make. Okay? So that will be, there's no taxes. So as soon as you die, it goes straight into a trust. The trust now pays out to the kids. Over 20 years, you could probably pay them $600,000. And at the end of 20 years, God's work gets it. How do I give it to the family and give it to God the exact same amount with the initial amount? Yeah.
Your previous slide, I give it twice. Are you actually transferring the asset, or is the asset being to the trust and it's liquidated it, or is it is a performing asset? So you got a good rental property that's actually having cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious.
No, you're exactly correct. In this case, we don't. It's just too much to become landlords. So we do sell the asset for as much as we can get for the asset, and then we do regular investments. In fact, for those of you in Arizona, we use Western Adventist Foundation, which is in Scottsdale, and they do all of the investment for us. They have a team of investors there. So we're able to get some pretty good returns. It depends on what category. They start out about 5.5%, and they've got an average on some of their accounts of 9 to 10%. So that is what they're getting. But they're in safe, and they're in what we call what? What do they call them? Come on, what's the word I'm looking for? Taxes like alcohol and gambling and no sin tax, I guess, and no stocks and stuff of that nature. So anyway, but that's how that is. Yeah. Okay. So, whoops. What did I do here? Okay. Once more. Okay. Here was the IRA. So now you can You can just say, on my death, if I don't use up my IRA, this is what I want it to do. I want it to go into a trust, and I want to pay my kids with it. Now, admittedly, no tax is being paid here. So you get the full 500 instead of only about 300, and then you get that over here, and that's starting to pay. Now, the children will pay taxes on the amount that they get each year, but it's going to be much smaller and probably won't bump them into a different tax bracket. Okay? If you gave it to them all at once, the tax bracket goes way up. Okay? So that's how it is. And you can give to God the same amount. Cool deal. Okay, now let's just say that you want to give God your property, but I want to live in it until I die. Okay? This is called a life estate reserve gift. So if you have a farm or a home worth $300,000, you can transfer title of property to a trust. Deeded property to it is written. Retain the right to use the property for the rest of your life. So all you're doing is saying, God, this house is going to be yours. I'm just going to use it until I don't need it anymore, and then it's yours. And so what do you get? Immediately you get a huge tax deduction based upon, of course, the value of this. The higher this, the more the tax deduction, of course. But depending on your age, the government will give you a tax deduction so that you probably won't pay taxes for years. Because these tax deductions go, actually they go for 6 years. So you can take it in the year that you use it, and then you get 5 more years that you can use it. It's called rollovers. You can do a tax deduction rollovers to the next year, So if you can't use up all of it in 1 year, it rolls to the next, and then if you can't use that up, it keeps rolling. So you will have 0 taxes. So this is a way to basically reduce your taxes right now and yet be able to live exactly like you're living. Now, typically these types of homes, they can be mortgaged, but most of the time when people are ready to do this, they are free and clear. But it still can be mortgaged as long as the problem is you deed it to us, now all of a sudden we're going to be responsible for the mortgage if you're not. And so we're not looking to take on that kind of a risk. So most of the time we will do these with a free and clear property. So there's nobody coming after it. So
in other words, you won't do it if we have a mortgage.
If you have a mortgage, we're going to say, why don't you get that taken care of first? Yeah. And so but that'll give you the big tax deduction, and then you can give it to God's work after that.
If you compare this with a reverse mortgage, you can get
Oh.
it back and then you give it to the church when you die.
Yeah. Reverse mortgages. Good idea, bad idea?
Bad idea.
Most of the time, it's not a good idea. There might be an occasion out there where it does, but the fees to set it up and the ongoing maintenance fees of those things are pretty hefty. And I have had some people that do it, and they're like, I'm being charged every month and I'm not even using. I understand. But in some cases, I have seen it where guy comes and says, we will give you right now $250,000 for your home in cash. Deed the title to us. We'll give you $250 in cash, and we'll write you a life estate so you can stay here for as long as you live. Okay, so she took the cash. The problem is she took the cash and never invested it. So it sat in the bank earning 0.1%. I'm like, what are you doing? Anyway, so the house has appreciated now. It's about $300,000 to $350,000. So the reverse mortgage people are going to make their money on the back end. They're going to sell it. They paid $250. They're waiting for that. They'll probably get $350 by the time they're done, maybe $400. So that's how they're making money. But the problem is she didn't invest that $250. So she didn't have the appreciation of the house value. So, if you do it right, some kinds it's okay, but be careful. A majority of them have got fees every month just to keep it open. And so it's not, and some people pay you. That's right. You're talking about the reverse mortgage, where, okay, instead of having, we'll pay you $500 a month or something, and it'll just come off of your mortgage. And so now your mortgage is going up. You're getting paid, but your mortgage is going up. Hopefully, at some point, it doesn't pass market value. I would do other things than reverse mortgages. The question, and we can work with you individually on those. Some people that want to give their home, they need income. So first of all, what's the objective? Why would you do it? Why are you thinking of a reverse mortgage? Is it because I don't have enough income to live? Okay, then maybe a reverse mortgage makes some sense, especially if you have a high asset that you're sitting on, but you don't have enough money to buy food. Okay, that's where you can take some of the asset and be able to use it. So there are some cases for that. But most of the time, it's just an intriguing idea in that case. So anyway, but you could do this. Sometimes we will say, look it, if you need income, here's what we'll do. We'll go ahead, if you will deed 50% of the property to It Is Written, we will put that amount of money into a charitable gift annuity for you. And it'll pay you $300 or $400 or $500 a month. And then when you're gone, when the property is sold, we'll get our money back. Okay, so we'll do that in some cases for that. But yeah, that's how that works. I think that I am so give to charity and give to your heirs. That's really what we're talking about. Instead of just giving to your heirs, you can give to God and your heirs with the same amount of money to both, with only costing you the one time. So, and at no costs. So, God's plan for your money. Keep sufficient funds to age 95. Plan on about a 3% annual inflation. This is part of your financial seminar that I'm sure you've been going through. I'm sure you've taught some of it, haven't you? Yeah, that's what I thought. I saw you on the videos. I was looking at the church website and saw you. And then for your needy children, if you have special needs children or troubled children in that case, you can set up what's called a special needs trust. So if you were to pass, you know that they're disabled or that they're financially this, with some of the assets that in your trust, you can say, I want to fund a special needs trust with 30%, whatever you want to do out of your estate, so that they will get $1,500 a month, something of that nature. So we can set all of that up for you. Special needs. Timothy says, take care of your kids. And or your grandkids. That all depends. How far do you want to go? If you have grandkids that are not getting cared for, and you have the assets and resources to do it, and you know that it will be spent in the way that you want it to be spent in, and if, then maybe. So, I mean, grandkids are great. If you've got the assets and they're in real need, and the parents just are struggling terribly, obviously you want to take care of your family first. God has given that responsibility to you. That's a gift from God. And you want to take care of that first. So God is not going to say, why did you not give to God's work when your family was in bad shape? And then, of course, give to God's work. So keep a savings, set up any needs for your children or grandchildren, and then remember God's work in this. So again, we had increased incomes. We have something called, now, this is my last thing, and then I'm done. If any of you have money in CDs, money markets accounts, or those types of things, and you're earning 2%, maybe 1.5%, 2%, then I got something I think you'd be very interested in, because this is called a revocable cash trust. Because we're already investing for so many of these other types of plans, we are opening up the opportunity for any one of you to receive a higher interest rate for your money, and you can go get that money anytime. Okay? So it's just like a bank account for you. It's called a special revocable cash trust with it is written as trustee. So in other words, what do you mean by it is written as trustee? It means we're going to put the money with Western Adventist Foundation, and you have to be a charity to do that, okay? So through us, we'll give it to them, and they will then invest it and pay you on a quarterly basis, if that's what you want. So interest rates between 5 and 6%. They're getting about 5.5% right now. They expect it to continue to go up. Now, folks, just really quickly here. This is not money invested in the market. So market fluctuations, beauty about this, it's not in the market. It's in what's called trust deeds with companies. Okay? And that's a fixed payout, these deeds are. So this is a very secure way to go, or we would not be offering it. Okay, so separate from your revocable living trust, this is a cash trust. Do you realize that you can have any number of trusts that you want, as long as you can fund them? A trust only is a document that says what you want done with this asset. So I can have a trust that I'll put this asset in. I can have another trust that I put another asset in. A living trust is kind of to catch it all. Okay? But I can, out of my living trust, I can take an asset out of my living trust and put it into a charitable remainder trust, into something that pays me right now. So anyway, so it's just another trust that you can go into. And by the way, all of these we offer without upfront cost to you. We pay the lawyer fees for all of the writing of these trusts, as long as you're remembering it is written in that plan. Okay? So you designate beneficiaries. So again, this is a trust. So you designate the beneficiaries, and in this case, because we don't have a security and exchange license, you have to include a charity. So we can do it if you have a charity involved. So here it is. You can give a charity, but no family members can be. I can't say, well, I want to give this to. I had someone do this last week to me. Well, I'm going to give you guys 10%, and then I want the rest of it to go to my daughter. Western Adventist Foundation doesn't want to be chasing down individuals. Now, we'll give it to a trust, no problem, because we can usually find we have a copy of the trust. They usually have a copy of the trust. So anyway, so you designate the beneficiaries, your revocable family trust or living trust is where you can go with that. So in other words, basically, the money is going to always be there. It's there for your use, and it'll go into your estate when you're gone. Okay? And so the money is always there. And then a little bit of it will go to charity. We usually have people that do like 10% to it is written and 90% to their family trust. So you can include us in that. Now remember, we may never see that money because this is a revocable cash trust. If you need that money, you can go get it anytime. Now they do tell me that it takes them a week or two to unwind the money, so you have to give them a few days to unwind it because they've got it all tied up into these trust deeds. So this is a way that you can really get some money. So we may never benefit from it because you may need it. So to me, this is for your nest egg. The savings that you have for the unexpected. Now, there are a couple requirements for this. I'm going to show it to you. Minimum deposit amount of $50,000. So we're not talking about a savings account here. We're talking about a fairly good investment account. Okay, so the minimum, and they are hoping, because I talked to them, and they're flexible on this. I have had somebody that had to go back and get some money in about 2 months, and they were okay with that. But they would like you to think about at least having it in there for a year so that they can keep it tied up and give you the interest on it. And of course, withdrawals are permitted if needed at all, and the payments are quarterly, or you can reinvest it in your account. So, revocable cash trust, if you've got some money that is your nest egg and you want a better return than the savings account at your bank can do, this is a great option. It's totally yours whenever you want it. You can withdraw it at any time and we may never see you again.
So the reason, the incentive for it is written to do this, to provide this service, it is acting like a credit union or bank. So that if the money you have, you can invest on other sources and make money out of it more than 5 to 6%. Otherwise, what is the incentive?
Yeah.
You provide this
Yeah,
services.
I hear you. I hear you. What the deal is that we are already investing money. I should say, we're not investing money. It is written does not invest money. We work with Western Adventist Foundation, who are the professionals who do it all. And they're in the markets every day, and they're watching. But they do a lot of the trust deeds as well. So they're around looking for these the companies that are wanting to expand, and they'll say, hey, look, I'll give you 6% if you can give us $2 million. And they'll say, okay, we can do that, because they're collecting everybody's funds, so they have that. I couldn't go and get that 6% because I don't have $2 million to lend them, or $10 million, whatever it is. But because we all pool our funds together, they can go offer that and get those kind of rates. Your question, though, is, what benefit is this? It is written. Really, there's no benefit to it is written whatsoever unless you die and leave some money, and there's still money in this account, then we'll get whatever percentage you indicated. Okay? So we're just offering it as a service and a potential gift to God. That's what it is. We're not making anything off of the payments or anything else. There is a 0.25 percentage fee that comes off of this by Western Adventist Foundation for their management fees. But that is already calculated into what I told you, the percentage rate of 5.5. So they're probably getting 6%, or 5.75, because they're only doing a 1/4% for management fees for the year. So that's what it is. But this is not a way that it is written is expecting to get very much money. It's a service to you, and I think it's a great one. So anyway, I want to thank you for a finished work. That's what we're here for, is to present the gospel to people and to share with you opportunities for ways that you can give to God and give to family, and some reasons why you should or shouldn't do one or the other. There are some booklets out on the table just as you enter the church here that says Giving to God and Family. And much of what I covered in the early part of this presentation is in that book, and a lot more. So it is a very good thing. Any of you have any interest in the revocable cash trust? Here are some of the this is just some of the requirements that are a part of that. I don't know if you're interested in that. I know somebody in this church who is already doing this, but I can't give you their name. All right. Thank you. You guys are the faithful ones here. All right. Thank you so much. My cards are out on the table too, and I would be happy to speak to any of you. This is considered my territory, so I would be happy to come over anytime and sit down with you and visit.